So next up, we have Dr. Paula Stern. She's the chairwoman of the Stern Group and a senior advisor to the National Center for Women in Information Technology. While she was a commissioner of the U.S. International Trade Commission in her 30s, she was the first presidential appointee to give birth on the job. And now she's a grandmother, an author, a businesswoman, a triathlon competitor, and a sculptor, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank y'all very much. Thank you, Cynthia, for raising money for Hillary and in taking this initiative today. It's a wonderful opportunity to tell you a bit about what I hope will be one of the final frontiers that women will conquer, technology and in particular computing science. So I want to make this a little interactive. What was the biggest Hollywood movie last weekend? Raise your hand if you know. Yes. Thank you. It was Hidden Figures. Now, raise your hands if you've seen it. You've got something ahead. Now, raise your hands if you're planning to see it. Yes, terrific. Now, if you want me to tell you about it, don't raise your hand because I'm going to tell you anyway. Hidden Figures is based on a true story which took place in the 60s in segregated Virginia just south of here. Vividly depicts the bias, both conscious and unconscious, which threatened to undermine America's ability to prevail in the perilous Cold War race with the Soviet Union to dominate space exploration. And in typical Hollywood fashion, the movie's simple, dramatic, concise, compelling. It's the story of persistent, resilient, and brilliant African-American females hired as human computers who managed against all kinds of societal barriers to apply their mathematical, engineering, and mechanical skills to become an integral part of NASA's team that sent the first man ever into orbit around the Earth, astronaut John Glenn. Despite dreadful toxic culture, these brave women prevailed and contributed inspired thinking and skill. This is a Hollywood film, so there are also a few miraculous turns of fate and unexpected help from a very few, yet key, white males. That feel-good tale occurred nearly half a century, 2 generations ago. Today, in this digital era in which we live, America's challenge is similar, but far, far more subtle. In effect, the figures are even more hidden. As our first African-American president exits the White House, the stakes may not seem so dramatic as they were, but they are, in my view, no less consequential. America today is not trying to beat the Soviets to the moon or dominate the technological race for the deadliest and most accurate rocket to deliver intercontinental ballistic nuclear missiles. Yet today, our country is in a perilous struggle that, like the 1960s, requires the fullest contribution of the very best American minds, regardless of their gender or their skin color. Now, if everyone in America saw this movie, I wouldn't have to give this talk, nor to spread the message of an organization I've been advising since 2004, when the National Science Foundation, seeing the peril, first set up NCWIT, which is what we call it. Its core message is that for America's ideals, and all the ideals we've been talking about here today, and for America's influence abroad to prevail, America must shed its toxic culture that is discouraging great innovators, regardless of gender and color. To maintain our global technological lead, America requires more computer scientists and skilled information technology specialists. And it's dumb to try to compete with the world with one hand tied behind our back, because our culture at work, in school, and in society too often discourages inclusion and diversity. Now, why do I portray our beloved nation this way? Don't we pride ourselves on being the great melting pot? Haven't we seen women reach parity in medicine, in law, and I can go on? Didn't a woman get more votes for president of the United States just last November? Well, look at the numbers. They don't lie or even prevaricate. There is a chronic shortage of computer scientists and IT skilled labor everywhere in this country, even in the Rust Belt, which delivered Donald Trump's winning electoral votes. This is not just a problem for Silicon Valley tech firms who depend on immigrants or temporary foreign workers on special H-1B visas. Simply put, the supply of skilled workers can't meet the demand everywhere in our economy today. Not in advanced manufacturing, consumer technology, not in transportation, not in data analytics, financial services, retail, global supply chain management, medicine, etc., etc. It is particularly dire, this gap, in defense and cybersecurity, because neither the government nor federal contractors to the government are permitted to issue security clearances to non-citizens on temporary visas. In fact, this shortage is not just because we're leaving out the girls, ironically. Our schools aren't preparing the boys or the girls to fill the 500,000 jobs that are in demand. Computer science is rarely taught. When it's offered, it's an elective often that doesn't count as one of the sciences required for college admission. Even in the recently revised advanced placement course in those rare schools in those rare states that offer computer science, girls make up only 23% of those test takers. And for those lonely few college women who choose to major in computer science or related IT fields in departments that have traditionally deployed hazing methods in those introductory courses to sift out the many and leave only the rare survivors, these few tenacious and determined women are graduating at the dismal rate of 17%. And when those few women who are CS or IT majors graduate, they then have to face biased corporate hiring practices to land a technical professional job and advance to a leadership role in creating new technology. No wonder women leave the private sector computer science and IT workforce at twice the rate of their male counterparts. So what? What does this matter to our American society and its future? It matters because the U.S. has relied and must continue to rely on remaining in the technological vanguard. We need the best of the best, and diversity of problem-solving teams immeasurably improves outcomes. Diverse groups solve complex problems better and faster than homogeneous groups. Businesses experience greater sales revenue, more customers, greater market share, greater relative profits when women and other underrepresented groups occupy meaningful and innovative roles. An analysis of over 20,000 startup companies found that successful tech startups have twice as many women in senior positions as the unsuccessful companies. Gender parity in tech also positively affects the quality of the software and the hardware that America, we all rely on, leading to a more widely applicable technologies that can positively affect all of our lives. Tech patents, for example, with the highest rates of citation are those that are produced by mixed gender teams. Those are the patents that are cited 30 to 40% more often than patents invented by either male-only or female-only teams. And when it comes to producing quality innovation, teamwork is more important than ever. The best products are themselves a product of teamwork. Bringing diverse talent into the workforce strengthens America's capacity to lead the world in these technological breakthroughs. We can't afford mediocrity if we're to defend our national security, boost our competitiveness, and create a better America through innovation. America has got a dangerous talent gap, and it's widening. Projections for demand and supply estimate that by 2024, there'll be 660,000 job vacancies beyond what American computer science graduates will be able to fill. We ignore this gap at our national peril. The U.S. technology industry is growing at nearly 12% per year. It added nearly 200,000 jobs in 2015, and it employs more than 6.7. The lack of women and minorities that are pursuing computer science perpetuates this growing demand-supply gap. And we're going backwards. In the 80s, almost 40% of computer science degrees were awarded to women. Today, that number's under 20%. To face the shortage of domestic workers and meet our economy's demand for computing talent, we need to utilize these overlooked resources, women and minorities. Why is this? To jumpstart the American economy and take advantage of the potential that technology has to offer, we have to address the underlying reasons why we are short-circuiting our future, why there are so few women and minorities in the technology pipeline. Why are these groups missing? Women and girls and minorities aren't broken. Majority groups aren't the enemy. The culprit is unconscious bias. It's shared by both men and women, and together we have to fix our culture. What's unconscious bias? It's composed of shortcuts that help us make sense of the world from day to day, and we all use these shortcuts, but they sometimes cause us to misinterpret or to miss things, and on a large scale, our collective biases add up to create significant societal problems. You're not convinced by my assertions? Let me give you a few sociological studies that show and demonstrate the pervasive unconscious bias that is holding us back. One example. When white male engineering students were told in advance of a test that Asian engineering students generally score better on math tests, the white male students ended up scoring lower. Here's another study. It's documented that the same resume can elicit an entirely different response in an employer, depending upon whether the applicant's a female or a male. For example, test subjects asked to read the same resume rated the applicant, that time named Howard, as more hireable and likable when the applicant was named Howard. Then, when they looked at the same applicant named Heidi, she was considered power-hungry, self-promoting, disingenuous. So we all have these biases, and we all must overcome them. And these biases are now being built into our algorithms and into our software and are perpetuating this. There are wonderful studies that tell you this. But we have to break out of these molds. And breaking out of these bias molds is no different from shattering glass ceilings. The Trump administration's talked about jobs, jobs, jobs. Well, if he's going to talk about jobs, he's going to have to spend less time talking to the titans on from Silicon Valley, as he did several weeks ago, and talk about those human resources, talk about educating those folks, talk about the K-12 through college curriculum that has to be corrected. Obama was our computer science for all president, and we can't afford to go backwards. In my lifetime, I've marched for civil rights, against the Vietnam War, and for women's rights many times. The president's misogynist rhetoric sparked this group's coming together today and tomorrow. If the president wants to improve his image among women voters or to fulfill his job promises, the smart place to start is by educating and training both boys and girls for the computer science and IT jobs that exist today and tomorrow. Imagine a world in which these hidden figures, the creative talent of every citizen, is fully valued and recognized and nurtured. Imagine a world where women are creating technology at the same rate and pace and participation as men. Technology drives our economy. It underpins our security. Bringing gender parity into the equation turbocharges that tech sector we rely on. It is not only the right thing to do, it's the smart thing. Growing up personally in the segregated South in Memphis, I remember my sister wanting to drink out of the colored water fountains, the ones we saw in the movie Hidden Figures. She wanted to drink out of those colored water fountains because in her young mind, she thought the water would come out rainbow colored. She wasn't wrong. Extraordinary ideas can flow from anyone. And we are impoverishing ourselves and holding back our nation if we're satisfied with a fountain that only produces one color. Thank you.
So, a question for Paula on women in technology, or any question about domestic and international trade, because she is the expert in that. Any one question? People are shy. Okay. So,
Well, that's good. Oh.
Can I just back up one thing you've said? I just spent 8 years being a dean at a major research university and hired a lot of people in computer science, and they were almost all Russians, Israelis, and Chinese.
What gender?
Insecurity, mix, did the best I could.
Half and half.
Not, we couldn't do it quite, but improved where we were. But the point is there were so few Americans of either gender, and it goes back to, not doing math the right way in high school and so forth. But it really goes to what you're saying. We're still not training people.
Starts K-12 and on up.
Thank you.